What I'd really like to do is get a little bit of this stuff, of this banding down here to see what's going on down there. So I've got myself a little pipette and I'm going to dive right in. I haven't washed my hands before this because I don't want to get any soap on my fingers, which could kill off any bacteria. So, and of course I don't have pipettes long enough because I wasn't prepared for this, as usual. But let's see what I can get from here. Fingers crossed I can scrape a little bit off. Perfect, I got a bit. Right, so now I'm going to stick this on a slide and see what we can get. There's a tiny little bit in there, I don't know if you can see it. There we go. And hopefully I can get that on a slide and see what's going on inside. So here goes. A tiny little bit from inside the tank. Put maybe one drop more on there. Okie doke. Right, let's see what it looks like under the scope. One of the first things that I spotted when I looked in this droplet of water was the brown algae, obviously, and also little brown diatoms moving around. One that you can see at the top here, and one that's within this moving mass. Now, the moving mass is actually an amoeba, and one that seems to be particularly hungry for brown algae, in particular the brown diatoms, which may explain the banding perhaps on the rock. I've not sped this up, by the way. This particular bit here is just at 1 speed, and it is really this fast. It seemed to be quite photophobic, so when I put the light of the microscope directly onto the amoeba, it seemed to try and run away from it, which was quite interesting in itself. The cool thing about amoeba is that they extend these little pseudopods in front of them, which are the clear tentacle-like things that they seem to feel around with. Then the rest of the body kind of follows. So all the little proteins and the cytoplasm inside of it kind of follows the main tentacles as they move around within the slide or within the environment of the tank. What they seem to do is kind of grab the food source, whichever they have the preference to. Some of them like ciliates, some of them like diatoms, some of them like other things. And they grab them and they absorb them and then they carry them around with them as a kind of lunchbox for the food, which they eventually digest and then use in their processes. Now, the next bit I've sped up for you a little bit, just so you can see exactly how the amoeba moves. You can watch it go off the screen here. And then in the next segment, you'll be able to see how it moves around objects. Now imagine an amoeba the size of a human. If one of these things was on our scale, imagine how scary it would be. It would be able to come under your doors. It would be able to climb straight onto your ceiling and move around and envelop you and absorb you. It would just be like that film, The Blob. I don't know if any of you saw that when you were kids, but our dad showed us The Blob. And that was pretty scary. It would drop down from the ceiling and envelop its victims and dissolve them. And I imagine that's what an amoeba would be like if it was our size. Also in the tank were the diatoms, as I mentioned before. Now you can see one here which is moving around and it's sort of a seed shape. And then on the left-hand side there's a rectangular one which is also moving around. And they move around on like a bed of slime almost. That in itself is very interesting. But they don't have sort of as purposeful a movement as the microorganisms in the tank. They seem to just move forward and then move backwards and then move forward and then move backwards. And so they're not quite the same. Here again, and this time sped up 4 times, you can see the amoeba moving around and squeezing through a gap in algae. and then spreading out on the other side until it finds its next place to search for food. When I zoomed out a little bit later on, after I'd been watching the amoeba for a while, I noticed that there was a large ciliate on the right-hand side, so I zoomed in a little bit closer to have a look at it. This ciliate had lots of little cilia around the outside, and on the inside it had a hole which would sort of fill up and pop and fill up and pop. Very similar to a suctoria that I'd seen beforehand. And a suctoria it's like a ball with spines on it, and it spikes its victims and then digests them in their own bodies. So I don't think this is the same kind of thing. This hasn't got any spikes on it. But it had the same sort of vacuole, the same sort of hole that would open up and pop again. Every now and again it would get stimulated by something around it and just shoot off. Yeah, weird. I'm going to have to find out what this is. I think it may well be some form of paramecium. After a little while I noticed that the amoeba had come over to say hello to the ciliate. So I filmed them both for a little while, which was quite interesting, seeing the two very different critters right next to each other like this. I searched around the droplet for a little longer, not having very much time to be able to do much. And I found another couple of little bits and pieces that were interesting, including one that looked perhaps as if it was another amoeba, but dormant, and a large husk which looked like it belonged to some sort of small dead invertebrate, and it had a little bacteria wriggling around inside of it. Perhaps I'll figure out what it was someday. But for now, I'll see you next time.